came to Quebec and you won't believe what happened.
When you look at the incredible amount of reserves that Quebec has, I understand you've got like a 200-year supply of reserves right beneath your feet. So it's not even just partnering with Alberta. We can help with the knowledge. We can help with the royalty structure to create a new revenue stream. We can help with the expertise and the regulation. Imagine if an Alberta politician had come here and tried to shut down your hydroelectric business and say you couldn't develop your aluminum industry anymore. That's what Stephen Guilbeault did to our province.
Despite the positive impression she left during her visit to Quebec, Danielle Smith still ran headfirst into a very Quebec reality, a political class largely hostile to the development of natural resources.
Nous, c'est de l'énergie propre. Eux, c'est de l'énergie pas propre ou sale.
Je pense que les hydrocarbures et les énergies fossiles sont les énergies du passé. Il n'y a pas d'avenir là-dedans. C'est pas par là qu'il faut aller. C'est pas ces projets-là qu'il faut réaliser.
Sur le fracking ou la technique d'extraction de ce gaz-là, si on regarde aux États-Unis ce que ça laisse, puis si on regarde l'acceptabilité sociale, moi je suis pas convaincu du coût-bénéfice et j'ai pas l'obligation non plus de fournir en énergie l'Europe.
Why are we, as smaller provinces, transferring money that goes essentially to Quebec, because the lion's share goes to Quebec? I can tell you every single time I meet the Quebec Premier, I remind him that he has, I believe it's about a 200-year supply of natural gas right under their feet. And to get to what I think one of the earlier speakers commented on and what Professor Toom mentioned is maybe that should be factored in, is yeah, you can keep it in the ground, but then we're going to assign a value as if you developed it, and then we will deduct out what you're owed based on the fact that you've chosen not to develop it. Yeah. We could take the same,
Here we have two provinces that sit at opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to energy development. And I am talking about the political leadership, not Quebecers themselves. According to a 2025 survey conducted by Synopsis Research, 59% of Quebecers support natural gas development in Quebec. Even more telling, that figure rises to 77% when resources development is presented as a way to reduce dependence on the United States. The same survey also highlights a significant lack of awareness regarding the origin of the natural gas consumed daily in Quebec. 29% of respondents do not know where their natural gas comes from, while 36% mistakenly believe it is produced in Quebec. The reality is quite different. Energy, which distributes nearly 97% of the natural gas consumed in Quebec, has sourced its supply primarily from the Dawn Hub in Ontario since November 2016. That gas originates mainly from the United States and Alberta, and a smaller portion is transported from the Empress Hub in Alberta. In other words, the gas that heats Quebec homes, businesses, and industries does not come from Quebec.
But develop natural gas for your own sake, so that you can wean off of American natural gas, so that you can supply yourself, and so that you can be an exporting of jurisdiction to our friends and allies in Europe, as well as be able to bring a new stream of electricity on as you wait to develop hydroelectric power, which can be very complicated to develop over many years.
Back to Danielle Smith. She scored points from the very beginning of her visit by choosing to start her speech in French. A simple gesture, but one that many viewed as a sign of respect toward Quebec culture.
Bon après-midi et merci Madame la Première ministre Fréchette pour votre très chaleureux accueil. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi de féliciter sincèrement Madame Fréchette pour son élection à titre de Première ministre de la belle province du Québec.
During her visit, Danielle Smith and Christine Fréchette discussed the possibility of developing an energy corridor between the two provinces.
I look at the Port of Quebec as well as Port of Montreal as being Alberta's gateway to Europe. And so I think that beginning with that spirit of collaboration on trade is going to be very important.
They also addressed the issue of the 50% plus one threshold in the event of a future Alberta or Quebec referendum.
As Prime Minister, on issues, particularly issues of a constitutional nature, I like to make sure I have the official advice before us, which is why yesterday I was careful in terms of my. No, it is not. It is not. For under a Clarity Act, it is absolutely not. And I would just recommend that you read the Clarity Act. It's very clear. Not surprisingly, the Clarity Act is very clear.
On va profiter aussi de la rencontre pour parler des États fédérés, de l'importance de représenter les intérêts des États fédérés dans le contexte de la révision de la CEUM. C'est quelque chose qui est essentiel aux yeux de l'Alberta, aux yeux du Québec également.
However, while Christine Fréchette did not appear entirely opposed to the idea of expanding Quebec's resource development, the political reality remains far more complex.
Ce que M. Duhem et M. Legault nous disent, c'est qu'il faut continuer dans les hydrocarbures, mais en fait, on enrichit des multinationales dans les paradis fiscaux, alors qu'on a de l'énergie puis des entreprises d'ici qu'on doit encourager.
Quebec will enter an election campaign this fall, and the two parties currently leading in the polls, the Quebec Liberal Party and the Parti québécois, have generally shown little enthusiasm for reopening the natural gas debate. PLQ parliamentary leader Marc Tanguay recently stated that there is simply no intention of revisiting the shale gas debate.
Ouvrir la loi sur l'exploitation et l'exploration. On n'est pas là du tout. Parler des gaz de schiste, on n'est pas là du tout. On n'est pas là du tout.
For his part, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon had already expressed his opposition during an interview I conducted with him.
Moi, je pense que si on s'affranchit de cette énergie-là pour la remplacer par l'énergie qui, pour répondre à ta question, nous enrichit, là. Si on augmente notre capacité hydroélectrique, puis qu'on roule là-dessus, puis qu'on énergise ce qu'on peut avec cette source-là, c'est un profit pour tout le monde au Québec. Alors que dans les modèles aussi de compagnies gazières, elles font ce qu'elles ont à faire, puis c'est pas tout le temps que c'est vraiment rentable pour la population, c'est rentable pour la compagnie qui exploite. Et si on prend, supposons, les sables bitumineux de l'Alberta, l'éléphant dans la pièce dont personne ne parle, c'est que ce qu'ils vont laisser comme sous à cochon, une fois qu'ils auront fini leur exploitation, ça coûte des milliards de réparations, puis ce ne sera pas les entreprises privées.
Furthermore, the Parti québécois has tabled a motion aimed at closing the debate on the issue in the National Assembly. During the question period, Danielle Smith reiterated her desire to give Albertans hope at a time when the separatist movement is gaining momentum.
As I mentioned, I'm fighting for the Remain side on that vote, and it is a question about whether we should have a question on a binding motion. So my job right now is to give Albertans hope and to give them an alternative. And the alternative is to give me a mandate to pursue more measures to increase our autonomy, similar to what Quebec has done. Quebec has a Quebec-Canada agreement from 1991 on immigration. We should look at doing that. We've also replicated some of the legislation that Quebec has about provincial priorities and making sure the federal government has to work with our provincial government about making sure that when international agreements are signed, they have to be affirmed by our legislature. Those are things that Quebec has already done within a united Canada, and so we think that those are the kind of things that Albertans would like to see as well, and that's what I'm working on.
She said she wants to demonstrate that it is still possible to achieve Alberta's objectives within a more decentralized Canada, one where provincial jurisdictions are respected as they were originally intended to be, rather than what we are seeing under the Liberal Party. One of the most impactful moments of her remarks came when she compared federal interference in Alberta's energy sector to what it would mean for Quebec if Ottawa imposed restrictions on hydroelectric development.
We'll be frank with you. I think Stephen Guilbeault was the most destructive politician to national unity that we have ever seen. I was proposing an alternative referendum question that Stephen Guilbeault should never be allowed to run for political office again, and I would get 100% support in Alberta. And the fact that he's leaving, saying, I might be back to do more damage if a different prime minister comes in, that is damaging to national unity. The fact that he left because of our MOU shows that he's not interested in the kind of compromise that the prime minister and I were interested in. And the fact that Avi Lewis at the federal level is also talking about zero development of fossil fuels. That is what has driven, that ideology is what has driven the country for the last 10 years. And that is a very destructive ideology to national unity. Imagine if I came here and I said, it's my mission to stop you developing hydroelectric power and stop you from developing aluminum. I'm going to do everything I can to put in new regulations to prevent you, not only from expanding it, but we want you to phase it out by 2035. That is what Stephen Guilbeault did to my province and my people.
The comparison resonated strongly. It helped many Quebecers better understand the frustration felt by Albertans when they see the federal government intervening in an area that falls squarely within provincial jurisdictions. Danielle Smith also expressed support for any project aimed at developing Quebec's natural gas resources. She even offered Alberta's expertise and said she would be willing to assist Quebec if we go forward.
I know that your new Premier, Premier Frechette, is doing a study to ask Quebecers about what their future energy mix should be for the next 25 years. And I'm very hopeful that the business community can help make the case that Stefan made today. There is no AI data revolution and there is no AI data success in Canada without natural gas. We cannot restore our industrial base without natural gas power. When you look at the incredible amount of reserves that Quebec has, I understand you've got like a 200-year supply of reserves right beneath your feet. So it's not even just partnering with Alberta. We can help with the knowledge. We can help with the royalty structure to create a new revenue stream. We can help with the expertise and the regulation.
That offer is particularly notable, considering that former Quebec Premier François Legault once described Alberta oil as dirty oil, while accepting 30 billions in equalization payments.
Mais si l'Alberta réalise des dizaines de milliards de dollars de revenus en exportant du pétrole, en passant sur le territoire du Québec, c'est pas normal que le Québec prenne tous les risques puis reçoive rien en échange. Il faut demander des milliards de dollars de redevances, donc une espèce de taxe à l'exportation du pétrole. Puis à ce moment-là, ça pourra devenir un projet intéressant.
Whether Quebecers agrees with Danielle Smith's vision or not, her visit succeeded in reopening a debate that had seemed buried for years in Quebec, the future of our non-renewable natural resources. Because beyond ideological positions, one question remains. Is it normal for a province sitting on significant natural resources to continue importing its energy while refusing to seriously explore development opportunities within its own territory? At a time when Canada is facing recession, growing trade tensions with the United States, and an increasing need to diversify its market, the question is worth asking. Responsible resource development will not solve all of Quebec's problems, but it could help accelerate the reindustrialization of certain regions, strengthen economic self-sufficiency, and foster new partnership between Canadian provinces. Thank you for watching. It was Alexa for Rebel News. We don't, and we refuse to accept any money from the federal government and any government. But if you can, go over rebelfieldreports.com, chip in what you can to support our independent journalism. Thanks.